There we go. All right, welcome. Today we are going to be talking with Erica Weed, and we're going to be going over the actualized leadership profile. So before we get started, though, I kind of want to take us through the typical perspective shifters reminder that it starts with you, right? So we come to this presentation with our own lenses of experience, our own perspectives, and those shade how we see the information presented and how we perceive the world around us. So Erica today is going to walk us through some of the things around how our shadow selves play out with leadership, and how we lead through our experiences and how that builds our profile. So just kind of keep those things in mind as we go through. So I'm going to introduce Erica Weed. Erica is a certified executive coach and talent development consultant. I love that, with more than a decade of service across industries and around the world. She's a doctoral candidate at the George Washington University, pursuing a degree in human and organizational development. She leads teams in change, culture, leadership of organizations, and identifying areas for development, and is trained in the use of several psychoanalytical tools, including the Actualized Leader Profile and the Workplace Big Five 4.0 profile. She's received a Bachelor's of Science in Integrated Marketing Communications from Winthrop University and a Master's of Business Administration from the McColl School of Business at Queen's University. So what is the Actualized Leader Profile, the ALP? This is a 57-item self-assessment that's going to measure your dominant motive needs and corresponding style of leadership. So I'm actually going to kind of pause there. I'm going to put the link for the ALP into the chat. Actually, before I do that, Michelle, did you see that come across in a heartbeat? Okay, so I'm actually not going to do that, because that's just, we don't need to do that. And I'm just going to let Erica dive in and tell us more about the leader profile.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about this process. I'm excited for us to record this so you can share it with your followers, because exactly what you're talking about at the beginning of your segment, the process really does start with us. I remind my clients a lot when we're going through coaching processes that the only thing that we can really control in this world is ourselves. It is our actions and our reactions to things. And so I think the most important part of the work that I do as a talent development consultant is giving people options when it comes to being able to manage and control and maintain and focus on themselves. And that way, once we have personal control, we can start talking about being more effective and more purposeful for our groups and teams, for our organizations, for ultimately the world. So using the Actualized Leadership Profile is one of the fastest and easiest ways that I have found as a coach to build rapport with my clients, give them a deep and meaningful sense of self-awareness, and start the process of change for them. Leadership is a third of the equation when it comes to culture and organizations. And so having a repertoire of leadership development tools is important for anybody who's interested in creating change in groups. End of story. And the reason that I like this particular assessment so much is because it is so firmly based in the work of Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow. We talk about the initial kind of motive need of leadership, what drives us to do the things that we do, why we just make the decisions that we make in organizations. And we really talk a lot about the shadow of leadership and why we engage in some of those counterproductive behaviors as leaders, even when we know that they're not particularly helpful in certain scenarios. So let me just start with this quote by Carl Jung, which I think is so insightful and really kind of delves into what the ALP is really about. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. If you look at the options for assessment in not just leadership, but also personality and thinking style and whatever the Enneagram is, we see that it's a lot of focus on the positives. It's a lot of information about what you do well, where your strengths are, what you should be focused on. And that's fantastic. That's a lot of information for anybody. And it's great to have specific areas that you gravitate towards. The problem with that is that we don't actually look at the opposite side of leadership either. We don't look at what we call the shadow, but what Carl Jung alludes to here is the darkness. We don't talk about the things that are uncomfortable, the things that we fear, the things that make us feel vulnerable. And because of that, we really open ourselves up to the possibility of engaging in unconscious counterproductive behaviors. So being snippy with your coworkers is an example. Micromanaging your team is an example. Maybe over accommodating people when you know that you're not necessarily going to have that much to give them is an example of shadow behaviors. The best thing about the Actualized Leadership Profile is that it not only tells you what your strengths are, what your gifts are, the things that are naturally comfortable to you, but it also tells you what the shadow of those things are so that you can better understand why you make the decisions that you make, so you have more control over making better ones. Do we want to look at our next slide? So this is what we're trying to develop. So the Actualized Leadership Profile, as I said, measures a few things. It measures your motive need, why you do the things that you do. It measures your shadow, and it measures what we call self-actualization. You'll remember self-actualization from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the top. And actualized leadership is simply being a fully integrated individual who elicits the willing collaboration of others consistently and consistently engages in the three sequences of self-actualization: confidence, performance, and renewal. Why is this important? Because an actualized leader is somebody who doesn't see their shadow as often or as intensely. They are able to create high-performing teams that have high levels of trust, communication, purpose. There are several more characteristics of high-performing teams, but the goal is for you as a leader to be able to create a team that is open, collaborative, and authentic. And so by stepping into your actualized leadership style and developing your self-actualization through coaching or through the characteristics of the actualized leader, you find that you are able to engage in more consistent and high quality leadership, which leads to more dynamic teams. All right, so the ALP is an assessment that you can purchase from a certified facilitator. Stephanie has my information. I am a certified facilitator, and there's also information about other facilitators in your area on the Actualized Leader website, which is www.drwillsparks.com, and you can see it just at the bottom of that report. But it's a 57 item self-assessment, so you do it by yourself, and then you are debriefed by a certified facilitator who can answer all of your questions and give you a better understanding of what the steps are to developing self-actualization and developing your leadership style. The reason that that's important is because each of us has a distinctive leadership style. There are three motive needs. So the need for achievement, which we call the achiever style of leadership, the need for affiliation, which we call the affirmer style of leadership, and the need for power, which we call the asserter style of leadership. Each of these styles is perfectly successful. I have seen leaders at the top of organizations, CEOs of large companies, who have each of these leadership styles and sometimes a combination of them. The idea is not to change your leadership style. The idea is to develop your style so you see less of the shadow. And you can see that each of these leadership styles also has its own corresponding shadow. If you want to learn more, not only can you take the Actualized Leadership Profile, but you can also read a book about actualized leadership that features 9 actual leaders who have gone through not only the ALP and been tested for what their dominant motive need was, but have also been categorized as far as their their strongest actualized characteristic. And so you can read through stories of not only the leaders who have used this assessment and what they've learned about becoming more actualized in their own style, but more about the model. And I think there's actually some more insight into how we develop the model and how it can be used in your organization as well.
So I think we might be experiencing a little bit of lag. I'm going to throw that out there.
This is the reason why I didn't want to be the one
Right?
presenting.
So I'm going to just kind of point out one of the core reasons why we talk about things like this, because when I say it starts with you, right, and we're talking about something like the actualized leader profile, it's important that when we look at things like this, that we're looking at it from a space of going, what am I all about, right? How can I improve myself? Because that ripples out, right? And that elevates the impact for other people. So if we can see less of our shadow selves, right, then we naturally will help other people to see less of their shadow selves as well. And so I'll open it up just really quick for, well, not really quick, for questions. Michelle, do you have questions? Michelle is currently studying the Enneagram, Erica. So I thought it would be interesting that she was on here. And I'm sure she'll have a load of questions because there's a lot of other things that she likes to go down the rabbit holes for too.
Happy to answer.
Yeah, I'm actually a psychometrist by training and education. So I've used quite a few different psychometric tools, and I'm just trying to see what the validity and reliability and those kind of scores are on this, or if there's been any research on that specifically.
Yes, and thank you for asking, because that is something that is important to me as well. So the validity and the reliability scores of this assessment, and I will not tell you the exact numbers because I don't remember, but there has been a study.
Yeah.
There has been a study, and it is published, and I don't remember the journal that it was published in either, but you can find it on drwillsparks.com. It is available for free download so that you can read through the study. And the validity and reliability are both in the high 80s,
Okay.
I believe.
I found something on ResearchGate, so I will have a little bit of a dive in there as well and have a look. And I'm also very, very interested and study Jung's work quite a lot. I mean, his work on archetypes have been misrepresented quite a lot through things like the MBTI and stuff like that, which I'm not a very big fan of. So I'm interested to know what the parallels are, yeah, with this. Obviously the shadow being an archetype, a basic archetype of his, you know, between the self and the anima and the animus and all those kind of things. So is this basically looking at those self versus shadow, or how does it involve Jung in the research?
So we start with McClelland's work on motive need. McClelland's construct of motive need being the three motive needs that exist in all of us in some combination. And so we start at that point. The idea of Jung folded in is that each of these motive needs has a bright side and a dark side. Okay. And one of the things that we really try to impress upon clients when we're using this assessment is that the shadow is not bad. The shadow is, as Jung kind of developed that construct, the shadow wasn't something that was to be torn away or fixed or eliminated. The shadow was a darker side of ourselves that we had been taught was socially unacceptable, and that the only path forward to being a full, complete human was full integration of that shadow. Yeah. And so when we talk about this work in leadership, we really focus on the shadow as the idea of this is what you've been, this is where your defenses lie. This is where you go under stress. This is what happens to you when you're feeling threatened or when you have somebody has struck a nerve with you. And we want you to be able to understand that feeling, be able to moderate that feeling for yourself, and be able to take the time necessary to reflect on that feeling so that you can process it fully and productively. And I think that that's a big difference from a lot of assessments that either don't talk about your counterproductive behavioral side or the counterproductive side in general, whether it's your thinking or your emotional state or just your behavior. I think a lot of assessments either don't touch on that, or they tell you that there are things that need to be fixed. There are things that need to be, our start, stop, continue behaviors, our I shall never, shall I ever kind of behaviors. And I think that that's a really short-sighted way to deal with something that is much deeper for most people. I think most of my clients do not wish to behave in ways that are counterproductive to their goals. And if they had the control, they would exert it, but they don't have the control because they don't have the awareness. And this assessment does a really beautiful job of gently providing that awareness for people so that they can absorb it and say, okay, I am an asserter. I have a high need for power. I have a fear of betrayal and loss of control, and that causes me to act in ways that make other people feel scared or diminished or uncomfortable, and I need to change that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think it's also often the practitioner that is an issue with in assessment. So it's not necessarily the tool that's the problem, it is the interpretation or the lack of interpretation, because even with the Enneagram, for example, which isn't a psychometric tool, but there are developmental lines, and there are how we behave in our stressed and best versions, and what causes that stress. So it kind of reflects more of the behavior that we have created to protect ourselves. So why are we protecting ourselves? And it's all about understanding and awareness. So I do appreciate that. Thanks.
And if you like the Enneagram, which you are 100% right, and I give it a lot of guff a lot when I talk about such psychometric tools, because I'm an academic and I want to use science in organizations because it cuts down on confusion. But when people talk about the Enneagram, which is becoming very popular in organizations right now, I think number one, they don't understand that it is purely for heuristic value. Does it make sense to you? Does it make you feel like you've got some agency for change? Okay, then that's as far as we need to go with that one. But I think if you want to understand, both the positive, I don't want to say positive, the productive side and the unproductive side, then I think that there are other tools that you can use for that. And the Enneagram has several pieces of several models incorporated into it, but there are better ways to examine that part of yourself. That is what I will say.
As is the MBTI. I just want to put it out there because that's also not a psychometric tool and should not be used.
Which is one of the reasons why I am a big fan of the Workplace Big Five as a 5-factor personality assessment. That's where we want to go.
We don't do boxes, we do scales.
Exactly. So interestingly though, Michelle, we've also done correlation studies between the ALP and the Workplace Big Five. And what we found is some interesting correlations between self-actualization and low need for stability, high originality, and high accommodation, which is something that, again, we have studied, we have run regression on. And so these are conclusions that we've come trying to kind of co-validate both of these assessments together. So that's also some interesting tidbits.
That would be very, very interesting to have a look at, because the Big Five is my preferred theory behind this analysis.
Smart lady, great. I love to hear it. Perfect.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
No, I would love to go dive in more. Sorry, Steph.
No, you're good. No, I was just gonna say that, I don't have any particular questions. Erica and I have done a deep dive on my own Actualized leadership profile, and it hit the nail on the head for sure. So I'm an affirmer style. So there's a lot of different things that I'm still doing from a shadow perspective that does not make me the best leader that I possibly could be. And that's that's okay, because we're still in that process. But I love the fact that I am able to bring more awareness to that now and better kind of understand that. And I also think that there is a healing component to this, because there are things that it shines a light on that might be things that I've never addressed before, even in 12 years of therapy, right? So having that background as well. Michelle, did you have any other questions?
No. I think I'm good.
I will tell you that my journey to becoming a coach and to learning about organizational development to becoming a practitioner started with the ALP. It started with me in a leadership class in my master's program, taking this assessment and learning about myself. Well, taking this assessment, feeling very, very sick inside, and then starting the process of learning about myself. And I think you're right. It does kind of touch on those, my Jungian analyst would say, she would call it the immortal wound, but really we're talking about our first experience that taught us who we are, how the world is, and how we are expected to be in it. And that experience is always impactful, often traumatic, but always impactful. And we carry that lesson for forever until somebody opens up and says, you have the opportunity to learn different lessons. You have the opportunity to see something different, to make different choices. And so I think in that way, it is very much a process of self-awareness and healing that a lot of us go through. I teach this assessment to facilitators who would like to use it. Michelle, if you're ever interested. And we do twice a year, we get together and we do a large class of facilitators and we spend 4 days with them. And over those 4 days, we do a lot of activities that really kind of help people understand what those initial experiences were, what those lessons were. Are they valid now? What can I change them to instead? What would be more productive for me? And how can I help to support myself in continuing to ask those questions throughout my life? And it is so powerful to watch a room of 30, 40 people have that experience where they just go, I didn't realize that at 4 or 5 or 6, I learned this lesson and have forever been carrying it with me, acting as if, the Jungian as if, this was the truth, and building up all kinds of coping mechanisms and behaviors and thought processes around something that may not have even really been the best case for me. And so I think that that's a really powerful tool for a lot of people.
Yeah, anything that brings self-awareness, I think, is worth having a look at. It's tricky with self-report if you don't look at the person's perspective of, it's not something that you can just set an online kind of, here's a standardized report. You have to see where the person's coming from, because there has to be some self-awareness to start with, and then to interpret as well.
It's one of the reasons why this assessment is designed to be taken with a certified facilitator. It's one of the reasons why we've trained so many certified facilitators personally, because we are so aware of the impact that this kind of tool can have on a coaching relationship, can have on an individual. And so we want to make sure that our coaches are well trained in the theory behind the model itself, the academics who created the theory behind the model, frequently asked questions about the model, learning from other facilitators who have facilitated using this tool. We want to create a place where continued learning and continued self-development and continued community really does support all of this process, because it is kind of a deep one.
It is, yeah. And I appreciate that in South Africa, you have to go through a whole process, because it's seen as a psychological act to perform something and interpret something like this. and I am a little bit wary of how it's being handled in some other countries. So I do respect that quite a lot.
You can say it. It's us, isn't it? I can tell it's us. I
No,
know
it's not actually. It's not.
I have had lots of conversations with lots of other coaches in a lot of different areas of development. And I think we're all kind of aware that at least in the US, there's not a ton of regulation around coaching, although it is a psychological process. And so, we try to make sure that people who are representing this assessment, people who are using this assessment, are well trained and understand the philosophy behind it, and are also, by the way, trained by a certified coach who also goes over the ethics of this kind of assessment and where it's not appropriate to use it, and when to say no to maybe an organization who would like to use this as an opportunity to exit somebody. We have those conversations as well, and I think that that's an important part of the training process.
Yeah, and to be fair, the US actually does have some measures in place, at least, where in the UK you can do a 3-day basic course without any academic background and perform this kind of thing, which for me is mind-blowing. I had to do an honors degree at least and do a 6-month internship, and it wasn't just a 3-day course. So yeah, it's good to know that there is still some of that going around.
I would argue a little bit on that, Michelle, because I don't think we have those same types of ethics here within the United States. I know
no, you don't. Yeah,
we have certifications that a lot of people are looking for, right, when they go to hire a coach, but we don't have, and that is one of the things from a Perspective Shifters platform piece that I'm hyper aware of when I'm working with coaches. I recognize that not everyone may have a certification for whatever limitations, but at the same time, what expertise are they bringing to the table that's going to help our organization? And is that expertise something that they're actively using with clients? Or are they just looking to break into that field and hope that things are going to work out? So
there can be a lot of harm done in this kind of situation.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a lot of hurt people, that carry it along. I'm so sorry, but I have to jump off because I'm going to be late for the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was really nice to meet you, Erica. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Well, I don't have any more questions. So if you don't mind, Erica, I'm just going to really quick, for anybody that's watching the recording, especially for any place that we might put the recording that isn't on the platform, I'm going to go over a little bit about how they can find more information. If for anybody that is watching this is brought to you by the Perspective Shifters platform. The Perspective Shifters platform is an all-in-one coaching learning platform, and it's designed for a community of people that are perspective shifters. So whether you're shifting your own perspective, or you're doing like Erica and Michelle and I do and worked with other people to shift their perspectives, this is a platform that's designed for you. So you can actually get access to the Perspective Shifters platform using the coupon code BRUNCH10 for 10% off. These are brunch time workshops, so sometimes morning or middle afternoon. So we like to use that coupon code. And then Erica has been so nice to offer us a 20% discount off of her Actualized leader profile and her services, and helping you to get the answers that you need with that. And you can use Perspective Shift 2023 for that. From a Perspective Shifters platform, what we actually focus on is a little bit of everything. We focus on the whole leader, understanding that each individual person has different needs that come up in different parts of their life at different parts of time. We try to ensure that you have training, leadership, and coaching in any of these areas that you need from coaches that are well respected, as the conversation that we've already had. So if you have any questions on this, please let us know. We are happy to answer any of those. And with that, Erica, do you have anything that you would like to add?
I welcome engagement. So if you would like to find me, you can find me at my website, which is www.ascendry.com, ASCENDRY. And you can find my email address there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer questions or take comments, whatever you guys need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Erica. I am going to stop the recording now, if I can figure out how.